It was late evening when he sat alone on the couch, staring at a half-eaten dinner. The lights in the small apartment were dim, and the sound of a cartoon played softly in the background. His daughter was sitting cross-legged on the floor, coloring something on a piece of paper. Her tiny hands were messy with crayons, and her little face was glowing with excitement. "Daddy," she said, turning to him with a wide smile, "for my birthday this year, can Mommy come too?" Her innocent question hit him harder than a storm. He froze for a second, his fork hanging in the air. He looked at her, trying to smile, but his lips trembled. "Sweetheart," he whispered softly, "Mommy she's in heaven, remember?" The girl nodded, her eyes still bright. "I know," she said, "but maybe she can still come for just one day. My friend Lily said her daddy invited someone who dresses up like a princess for her birthday. Maybe someone can dress up like Mommy?" The father felt something inside him break. He wanted to say no, but the look in her eyes stopped him. It was the kind of hope that only a child could have, the kind that made you wish for impossible things. That night, after she fell asleep, he sat by her bed for a long time, watching her breathe. She had the same face as her mother, the same soft eyes, the same little smile when she dreamed. He thought about how much she had lost even before she could understand what loss meant. He had tried everything to keep her happy. He worked double shifts, took her to the park on Sundays, and cooked pancakes with funny shapes just to make her laugh. But no matter how hard he tried, there were moments when she'd look out the window, waiting for someone who would never come back. As the birthday drew closer, her excitement grew. She talked about balloons, her favorite cake, and how she wanted to invite her classmates. But every time she mentioned Mommy, he felt that same ache inside. One night, while cleaning up her toys, he found a small note she had written in her childish handwriting. It said, "Dear Mommy, please come to my birthday. I miss you. I'll be wearing my yellow dress." He sat on the floor holding that piece of paper, and tears rolled down his face. He didn't know what to do. He didn't want her to be disappointed on the one day that should have been full of joy. He couldn't let her feel that empty chair again. For days he tried to think of something. Maybe he could distract her with a trip. Maybe he could tell her that Mommy sent a gift from heaven. But nothing felt right. Every idea felt like another lie. Then one morning on his way to work, he stopped at a small cafe near the bus stop. He ordered a coffee and sat quietly, lost in thought. That's when he noticed a woman at the next table. She was helping a little boy tie his shoelaces while talking gently to him. Her voice was calm, kind, and full of patience. Something about her reminded him of his wife. Maybe it was her warmth. Maybe it was just the way she smiled at the child. He couldn't stop watching for a moment. Then he quickly looked away, embarrassed at himself for even thinking about it. But the thought wouldn't leave his mind. What if he asked someone like her to just pretend just for one day? It sounded crazy. Who would ever agree to something like that? Still, the image of his daughter's happy face haunted him. He sat there, battling with his thoughts. His heart said he had to try. His mind said it was impossible. When the woman stood up to leave, he suddenly found himself standing too. His voice shook as he called out, "Excuse me." She turned around, surprised. He hesitated, then walked closer. "I'm sorry," he began awkwardly. "I know this might sound strange, but could I talk to you for a minute?" Her expression softened, though she looked cautious. "Sure," she said. He took a deep breath. "I have a daughter," he said. "She's turning 7 next week. She lost her mother a few years ago, and she's been asking me if her mommy can come to her birthday." The woman's face changed. She looked down for a moment as if she understood something deeper than his words. "She doesn't understand that some things can't happen," he continued, his voice breaking. "And I don't want to lie to her, but I also can't watch her cry on her birthday. So I was wondering—" He stopped, realizing how crazy he sounded. "I was wondering if you could, just for 1 week, act like her mother. Not in any strange way. Just be there for her birthday. Make her feel like her mom is still watching over her." There was a long silence. The woman blinked, unsure how to respond. "You want me to pretend to be your wife?" she asked softly. He nodded quickly. "Just for 1 week?" "Just until her birthday is over. I'll pay you if you want, or whatever you need. I don't know what else to do." For a moment, she didn't speak. She looked down at her hands, thinking. Then she said, "That's a lot to ask." "I know," he said quietly. "I know how it sounds. You don't have to say yes. I just thought maybe you'd understand." You seemed kind. Something in his voice, something raw and real, made her pause. She could see he wasn't trying to manipulate her or make up a story. He was just a father who was drowning in guilt and love all at once. She took a deep breath and asked, "What's her name?" He told her. The woman smiled faintly. "And what does she like?" "She likes pancakes, coloring, and bedtime stories about stars," he said, almost whispering. Another silence followed, but this time it was softer. She looked out the cafe window, then back at him. "All right," she finally said. "I'll do it. But not for money. I'll do it for her." He blinked in disbelief. "You'll really?" She nodded. "Only for a week. I'll pretend to be her mom, but you have to promise me something. You won't lie to her forever. This should be about love, not confusion." He agreed instantly, his voice shaking with gratitude. "Thank you." "You don't know what this means," the woman smiled again. "I think I do," she said softly. That night, when he came home, his daughter ran to him with excitement. She held up a drawing of 3 people, a man, a little girl, and a woman holding hands. "Look, Daddy, it's us," she said proudly. He hugged her tightly, hiding the tears that filled his eyes. For the first time in months, he felt something other than sadness. He felt hope. The next few days were filled with nervous planning. The woman came by the apartment to meet the little girl. At first, the child was shy, hiding behind her father's leg. But within minutes, she was laughing, showing her toys and asking the woman to read her a story. Watching them together, the father felt a strange mix of relief and guilt. Relief that his daughter was smiling again. Guilt that it was all built on a pretend moment. But when he saw the child resting her head on the woman's shoulder, smiling peacefully, he realized that maybe pretending wasn't such a bad thing, not when it came from love. Later that night, when the woman was about to leave, she looked at him and said, "She's beautiful. You've done a good job raising her." He smiled faintly. "I don't know. Some days I feel like I'm failing." "You're not," she said firmly. "You're just tired. But you love her. That's enough." After she left, he stood by the window for a long time, watching the city lights. He thought about how strange life was, how one small act of kindness from a stranger could change everything. His daughter was already asleep, clutching her stuffed bear and smiling in her dreams. He whispered to himself, "Just 1 week. That's all I need to make her happy." He didn't know that this 1 week would change not only his daughter's world but his own life forever. The next morning, the little girl woke up earlier than usual. The sunlight peeked through the curtains and she jumped out of bed, running straight to her father's room. "Daddy, is she coming today?" she asked, her voice full of excitement. He rubbed his sleepy eyes and smiled. "Yes, she's coming later today," he said softly. "You should get ready and help me clean up the living room." The girl clapped her hands and ran off to pick up her toys, humming a song under her breath. The house suddenly felt alive. Like the sound of laughter had opened the windows that had been closed for far too long. The father, though, felt nervous. He wasn't sure how this week would go. It was one thing to ask for help from a stranger. It was another to live with that choice. What if his daughter grew too attached? What if the woman changed her mind halfway through? Still, deep down, he hoped this would bring a little peace, even if just for a while. That afternoon, the doorbell rang. The little girl ran to the door before her father could even stand up. When she opened it, the woman stood there holding a small bouquet of flowers and a warm smile. "Hi there," she said softly, kneeling down to the child's level. "You must be the birthday girl I've been hearing about." The little girl giggled and nodded. "Are you, Mommy?" she whispered, her voice shy but full of hope. The woman hesitated for a brief moment, then looked at the father standing behind her. He gave a small nod and she smiled gently at the child. "For this week," she said kindly, "I'll be your mommy. I'm so happy to be here." The girl's face lit up like sunshine. She grabbed her hand and pulled her inside, talking about all the things she wanted to show her drawings, her toys, her favorite books. The woman followed, laughing softly, her eyes filled with warmth. The father watched quietly from the side. He hadn't seen his daughter this happy in a long time. It felt like watching light fill a dark room. As the day went on, they all sat together on the floor, coloring. The woman listened carefully as the girl explained every detail of her drawings. How she wanted her birthday cake to have pink frosting, how she wanted to wear her yellow dress, and how she missed Mommy's bedtime stories. When the little girl wasn't looking, the woman glanced at the father. "She's sweet," she whispered. "She is," he replied softly. "Too kind for this world sometimes." The woman smiled but didn't say anything. She could see how much love this man had for his daughter, and how much sadness still lingered in his eyes. Later that evening, the woman helped make dinner. It wasn't fancy, just pasta and vegetables, but it felt different somehow. The house was filled with soft laughter, the clinking of plates and the sound of a child's joy. When the girl ran off to wash her hands, the father spoke quietly. "You didn't have to do all this," he said. "I can't thank you enough." The woman looked at him and shook her head. "You don't owe me anything. I just wanted to help her. She reminds me of someone I once knew." He didn't ask who. He could tell it wasn't something she wanted to talk about. Still, he noticed the faint sadness behind her eyes, the same kind of sadness he carried himself. That night after dinner, the girl asked the woman to read her a story before bed. She sat beside her, reading in a soft, comforting voice. The girl leaned against her shoulder, her eyelids growing heavy. When she finally drifted off to sleep, the woman carefully tucked her in and whispered, "Sweet dreams, little one." Standing by the door, the father watched silently. His heart felt heavy yet peaceful. For the first time in years, the bedtime story didn't end in tears. After the child was asleep, the woman joined him in the living room. The air was quiet except for the sound of the clock ticking. "She's an angel," the woman said. He nodded. "She's been my reason to keep going. Some days I don't even know how I do it, but then she smiles and it all makes sense again." They talked for a while, sharing small pieces of their lives. He told her how his wife had passed away in an accident when their daughter was just a toddler. How he had struggled to work, raise her, and fill the space that was once a family. The woman listened without interrupting. When he finished, she said softly, "You're doing more than you think. She's lucky to have you." He gave a small, tired smile. "I don't feel lucky most days, just tired." She nodded in understanding. "I know that feeling." For a moment, they both sat in silence, two lonely souls who somehow found comfort in a strange situation. The next few days moved quickly. They took the girl to the park, baked cookies together, and even made handmade decorations for the upcoming birthday party. Every moment seemed filled with laughter and warmth. At the park, the little girl ran ahead, chasing bubbles. The father and the woman walked behind her, talking quietly. "She's so full of life," the woman said, watching the child spin around with joy. "She is," he said. "But sometimes I worry she hides her sadness behind that smile." The woman looked at him. "Children are stronger than we think. She's smiling because she feels safe, because you gave her that." He wanted to believe her. For a while, he actually did. When they got home that evening, the little girl insisted they all watch her favorite movie together. She sat between them on the couch, holding their hands, smiling from ear to ear. It was such a simple thing, a movie night, but to her it felt like a real family again. As the movie played, the father caught the woman glancing at him. Their eyes met for a moment, and both quickly looked away. There was something unspoken there, and a quiet understanding, maybe even comfort. But neither dared to name it. Later that night, when the woman was getting ready to leave, the girl ran to her and hugged her tightly. "Promise you'll come back tomorrow," she said. The woman smiled and hugged her back. "I promise." After she left, the little girl looked up at her father. "Daddy, I think Mommy's happy again," she said innocently. He froze for a second, unsure what to say. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "She was sad in heaven," the girl said. "But now that she's here, she's smiling again." He swallowed hard and just hugged her. "Yeah," he whispered. "I think she's smiling too." The next morning, he woke up to find his daughter already dressed, brushing her hair in front of the mirror. She was singing a song she made up, her face glowing. He stood by the door and watched her quietly. He realized that even though this was only supposed to be temporary, it had already given her something she desperately needed: hope. Later that day, the woman came over again. They spent the afternoon planning the party, wrapping small gifts and baking cupcakes. The kitchen turned into a mess of flour and laughter. The little girl had frosting all over her cheeks, and the woman couldn't stop laughing. At one point, the father caught himself smiling too, a genuine, effortless smile. It felt strange, but good. That evening, after putting the girl to bed, he and the woman sat outside on the small balcony. The night air was cool, and the city lights shimmered in the distance. "I know this is just for a week," he said quietly, "but it feels like something more." She looked at him, her eyes soft. "Sometimes 1 week can change everything," she said. He nodded slowly. "You know, I was afraid to ask you that day. I almost didn't, but something told me you'd understand." She smiled faintly. "Maybe I did because I've lost someone too. Different story, same emptiness." He looked at her with quiet respect. They didn't need to say more. Some pain didn't need explaining. It just needed to be shared. As the days passed, something gentle began to grow between them. It wasn't romance or anything like that, not yet. It was something deeper, quieter. A sense of peace, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, life was giving them both a second chance at happiness. And while neither of them said it out loud, they both knew that when the birthday finally came, it wouldn't just be a celebration for a little girl. It would be a celebration of something new, something none of them had expected when this all began. The week went by quickly, but for the little girl, every day felt magical. Each morning she would rush to greet the woman as if she had been her mother all along. Her laughter filled the small apartment, bouncing off the walls and making everything feel lighter than it had in years. The father watched quietly, sometimes from across the room, sometimes from the kitchen doorway. Every small interaction between them made his heart ache and swell at the same time. He had been lonely for so long, living in a house that felt emptier with each passing day, and now it felt like life was gently creeping back in, one smile at a time. One afternoon, the three of them sat in the living room, working on a small art project. The little girl was making a birthday crown out of colored paper, stickers, and glue. She held it up proudly, examining it from every angle. "Look, Mommy, it's perfect," she said, beaming. The woman smiled at her, gently adjusting the crown on her head. "It's beautiful just like you," she said softly. The little girl giggled and turned to her father. "Daddy, Mommy says I'm beautiful." "Can you believe it?" He laughed quietly, his eyes glistening. "I believe it," he said. "I've always believed it." That evening after dinner, the father suggested a walk in the nearby park. It was unusually warm for the season, and the air smelled faintly of flowers. The little girl ran ahead, chasing the falling leaves, while the woman and the father walked behind her, their hands brushing occasionally. "Thank you for doing this," he said quietly, almost as if the words needed to be spoken. She looked at him. "You don't need to thank me," she said. "I see how much she means to you, and I can't stand to see a child sad when it's something we can fix, even for a short time." He nodded, taking a deep breath. I don't know if I can ever repay you." "Just seeing her smile is enough," she replied. The little girl came running back, holding a handful of leaves. "Look, Mommy, look at these," she exclaimed. She started tossing them into the air, laughing as the leaves floated down around her. The woman joined in, and even the father couldn't help but laugh. For the first time in a long time, he felt a sense of calm. The heaviness in his chest seemed to lift, even if just a little. It was a strange feeling, almost foreign, but it felt good. That night, after putting the little girl to bed, the father and the woman sat in the living room, talking quietly. "She's amazing," he said, almost in a whisper. "I don't know how I ever survived before she was born. She's everything to me." "She's lucky to have you too," she said softly. "You're the reason she feels safe and loved." He shook his head. "I try, but sometimes I feel like I fail her. I can't bring her mother back, and sometimes I feel like I'm not enough." She reached out and gently touched his arm. "You are enough," she said firmly. "More than enough. She knows that. I can see it in her eyes." The days continued to pass in this quiet, gentle rhythm. The woman helped with everything: cooking, cleaning, playing games, reading stories. The little girl blossomed under their combined care, her laughter echoing through the apartment and making it feel warm and alive. One afternoon, while they were baking cupcakes for the birthday party, the little girl asked a question that made both adults pause. "Mommy," she said, her eyes wide, "do you think Daddy and I can have another mommy after you leave?" The woman froze for a moment, unsure how to respond. She didn't want to lie, but she also didn't want to take away the little girl's hope. "Well," she said carefully, "I think love comes in many forms. Sometimes people come into our lives to help us in special ways, and sometimes that love stays with us forever, even if the person isn't always there." The little girl nodded thoughtfully, accepting the answer without argument. She went back to her cupcakes humming a little tune, but both adults felt the weight of the words. That night, after the little girl was asleep, the woman looked at the father. "Do you ever think about what this week might lead to?" she asked quietly. He shook his head. "I try not to, I want her to be happy. That's all I care about," she nodded, understanding him. Sometimes the best intentions lead to unexpected things. But right now, focus on her. That's what matters most. The next morning, the little girl woke up extra early again. She ran to the window and pressed her face against it, watching the world outside. "Mommy, look! It's a sunny day. Perfect for my birthday," the father chuckled. "Yes, it is. And we're going to make it perfect for you." Throughout the day, they prepared for the party. Balloons were inflated, streamers hung, and cupcakes iced with care. The little girl was buzzing with excitement, unable to contain her joy. When the woman showed her the decorations, the girl gasped. "It's beautiful. You did this for me, Mommy?" "Not just me," the woman said, smiling. "Your daddy helped too." The girl hugged them both, holding on tightly. "I love you both," she whispered. The father felt tears prick his eyes. He held her close, wishing he could freeze this moment forever. He had never imagined a simple act like this could create so much love and warmth in their lives. Later that evening, the woman sat on the couch with him, exhausted but happy. "You know," she said softly, "this week has been amazing. Not just for her, but for me too." He looked at her, surprised. "For you?" She nodded. "I've been lonely for a long time. Seeing her smile, being part of this little family even for a short time, it's made me feel alive again." He didn't know what to say. He had been so focused on his daughter that he hadn't thought about how much this arrangement might be helping her too. For the first time, they both sat quietly, sharing a moment that needed no words. It was simple, quiet, but full of meaning. The following days flew by. The woman and the father worked together seamlessly, their routines becoming natural. They cooked meals, helped the little girl with her homework, and played games together. The apartment was alive with laughter, love, and a sense of belonging. The little girl, for her part, couldn't stop talking about the upcoming party. She counted down the days, imagining every detail. She even made a list of games and activities, showing it to both adults proudly. On the night before the birthday, the woman sat on the balcony with the father, looking at the city lights. "Tomorrow will be a big day," she said softly. He nodded, his hands gripping the railing. "I just want her to be happy. If I can do that, nothing else matters." She looked at him, a faint smile on her lips. "You've done so much already." "She's happier than I've ever seen her." He let out a deep breath, feeling a weight lift from his chest. For the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of hope that life could still be beautiful. That night, after the little girl was asleep, he and the woman went over the final details for the party. Balloons were ready, cupcakes were iced, and small gifts were wrapped neatly. Everything was set for the big day. As they sat quietly, he looked at her and said, "I don't know what I would have done without you." She reached out, touching his arm gently. "You would have found a way, but I'm glad I could be here to help, for her and for you." Neither of them spoke for a while, both lost in their own thoughts. They had started this week as strangers, and now somehow they felt like family. It was strange, unexpected, and yet perfectly natural. The father went to bed that night with a sense of calm he hadn't felt in years. He knew tomorrow would be special. He didn't know what the future held, but he did know one thing. For the first time in a long time, they all felt a little closer to being whole again. And in the little girl's room, asleep under her blanket, she dreamed of a perfect day. Her mommy and daddy smiling, balloons floating in the air, and laughter that never ended. She had no idea how much effort and love had gone into this week. All she knew was that she was happy, and that was all that mattered. The morning of the little girl's birthday arrived, bright and full of promise. Sunlight streamed through the windows, reflecting off the colorful balloons and streamers that now decorated the living room. The scent of freshly baked cupcakes filled the air, mixing with the faint aroma of pancakes from breakfast. The little girl bounced out of bed with unmatched energy, humming a tune she made up herself, unable to contain her excitement. "Mommy, Daddy, today's my birthday," she shouted, running to the kitchen. She hugged them both tightly, her laughter echoing through the apartment. Her joy was contagious, and for a brief moment, the father and the woman felt as if the world outside had disappeared, leaving only the warmth of their little family inside. The woman knelt to her level, smoothing the hair out of her eyes. "Yes, sweetheart," she said softly. "Today is your special day, and we're going to make it amazing." The father watched them, feeling a lump in his throat. He had been so afraid that he wouldn't be able to give his daughter a happy birthday. But now, seeing her radiant smile, he realized that hope and love could create moments of magic, even from grief. As the morning moved on, the little girl ran around helping set the table for the party. She placed colorful plates and napkins carefully, insisting that everything be perfect. "Mommy, make sure the cupcakes are ready," she said, her eyes shining. The woman smiled and adjusted a few frosting designs, making each one perfect in its own way. The father couldn't help but chuckle. "You've been planning this for a week," he said. "I think we've got it covered." "No," she protested, giggling. "This is my birthday. I have to make sure everything is perfect." By mid-morning, the first guests began to arrive. The little girl ran to greet each friend, introducing them to her mommy, as if she had always been part of their lives. The woman knelt to greet them, her warmth genuine, her smile easy and comforting. She answered questions about games and snacks, never once acting stiff or forced. The father stood nearby, helping where he could but mostly watching, amazed at how natural she was in this role. The party began with small games: pin the tail on the donkey, musical chairs, and a treasure hunt. The little girl laughed and cheered, her energy unstoppable. The woman played along, guiding the children gently, helping them find the hidden treasures and celebrating each small victory with enthusiasm. At one point, the father found himself sitting on the couch watching them. He noticed something remarkable. His daughter wasn't just happy, she was glowing. The small apartment, which had felt empty and quiet for so long, was alive with joy. For the first time in years, he felt a profound sense of peace. During a brief quiet moment, the little girl tugged at the woman's hand. "Mommy, can we have the story now?" she asked eagerly. The woman nodded, and they all settled on the couch. The little girl leaned against her, listening intently as the woman told a story about a brave little girl who saved her village with kindness and courage. The father watched, feeling a strange mixture of gratitude and awe. He didn't know what he would have done without her, but he knew this act of kindness would stay with them forever. When it was time for cake, the little girl's eyes widened at the sight of a 3-layer cake, decorated in pink and yellow with little flowers on top. "It's perfect." "Mommy, Daddy, look!" she exclaimed. She ran to the woman, hugging her tightly. "Thank you for making it so pretty." The woman smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest she hadn't felt in a long time. "I'm glad you like it," she said softly. "You deserve all the happiness in the world today." The father stepped forward, holding the little girl's hands. "Make a wish," he said. She closed her eyes tightly, whispered something under her breath, and blew out the candles. Everyone cheered, and the little girl laughed, clapping her hands. The happiness in that moment was so pure, it almost felt like time had stopped. After the cake, the children ran outside to play in the small backyard. The father and the woman stayed behind, cleaning up and preparing for the next set of games. It was in this quiet moment that the father looked at the woman, realizing how much she had become part of their lives. "You know," he said softly, "I never imagined this could feel so right. You just stepped in and everything feels like it should have been this way all along." She looked at him, her expression thoughtful. "Sometimes life gives us moments we don't expect. This week has been one of those moments. For her, yes, but for both of us too." He nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. "I don't know what I would have done without you. I was so scared she would be disappointed." She shook her head gently. "You did everything right. I just helped a little." By late afternoon, the party had wound down. Most of the children had gone home, clutching small gifts and smiling from the day's fun. The little girl, exhausted but still glowing with joy, sat in the middle of the living room surrounded by balloons and leftover decorations. She looked up at the woman. "Thank you for coming, Mommy," she said softly, her eyes serious. "I love you." The woman felt a lump in her throat. She knelt beside her, hugging her tightly. "I love you too, sweetheart," she said. "More than you know." The father watched them, tears forming in his eyes. This week, this one small act of kindness had created something bigger than he could have ever imagined. It wasn't just a birthday. It was a reminder of what love could do, even in the hardest times. Later that evening, after the little girl was asleep, the woman and the father sat quietly on the balcony. The city lights twinkled below, and the air was filled with the calm of a day well lived. "She's so happy," he said softly. "I don't know how to ever thank you for this." "You don't need to," she said. Seeing her smile, being part of this moment, "It's enough. I think we both needed this more than we realized." He nodded, watching the lights flicker in the distance. "I just hope this happiness lasts, even if it's just for today." She reached over and touched his arm gently.
Sometimes moments like these can change everything.
"You just have to let them." They sat in silence for a while, both lost in thought. The week that had started as a desperate plea for help had grown into something far more significant. A bond built on trust, care, and shared love. It was fragile, yes, but it was real. The father knew that tomorrow, the last day of the week, would be difficult. Saying goodbye, even temporarily, would be painful. But for now, he allowed himself to savor the moment. The laughter, the warmth, the joy that filled the apartment. He thought about his daughter, her tiny hand still sticky from frosting, her face glowing with happiness. He thought about the woman, how naturally she had stepped into a role she never expected to have. And he thought about himself, realizing that maybe he wasn't as alone as he had thought. For the first time in a long while, he felt hope. Not the fragile kind that disappears with the morning light, but a steady, quiet hope that life could still offer love and happiness, even in the unlikeliest forms. As he turned off the lights and prepared for bed, he glanced at his daughter sleeping peacefully, her tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. He whispered a quiet prayer of thanks, knowing that today had been perfect. And as he drifted to sleep, he felt a strange sense of peace, a feeling he hadn't known in years. For the first time, he understood that family wasn't just about blood. It was about love, presence, and the little acts of care that could change a life. Tomorrow would be the last day of this week, the day when everything would shift again. But tonight, for this one magical night, they had created a perfect memory, one that would linger long after the balloons were gone and the cake had been eaten. He closed his eyes, letting the warmth of the day wash over him. For the first time in a long time, he believed that happiness, even the kind built from small, unexpected miracles, was possible. The morning of the last day of that extraordinary week arrived quietly. The apartment was peaceful, though faint traces of the birthday celebration still lingered. A few balloons floating lazily near the ceiling, half-eaten cupcakes on the counter, and scattered decorations waiting to be packed away. The little girl awoke early as usual and ran to the living room, expecting another day of joy with her mommy by her side. Her eyes sparkled when she saw the woman sitting on the couch sipping her morning tea. "Mommy, good morning. Today is our special day too, right?" she said, bouncing on her heels. The woman smiled softly, a little bittersweet this morning. "Yes, sweetheart. It's our special day. Just one more day of fun together," she said gently. The little girl didn't seem to notice the sadness in her voice. She bounded forward, hugging her tightly. The father watched them, a quiet ache in his chest. He knew this day would be the hardest. Not for the little girl, but for himself and the woman who had stepped into their lives and become so much more than a stranger. Throughout the day, they tried to keep things light. They baked cookies, played board games, and even made a small craft project together. The little girl laughed, sang, and danced as if this week had been a normal part of her life, as if nothing was about to change. The father watched, heart full but also heavy. He had been so focused on making her happy that he hadn't stopped to think about what would happen when it ended. At one point, the little girl tugged at the woman's hand. "Mommy, can we read my story one more time, please?" she pleaded. The woman smiled, feeling the tightness in her chest. "Of course," she said, gathering her close. They read together, her voice soft and comforting, the little girl leaning against her shoulder. The father sat nearby, watching, and felt tears prick at his eyes. This moment, so simple, so ordinary that it had become precious. He wanted to hold it forever. Later, when the little girl went down for a nap, the father and the woman sat on the balcony. The city outside was quiet, almost as if it understood the gravity of the moment. Neither spoke at first. They simply watched, lost in their own thoughts, knowing that when the little girl woke up, this week would start to end. "This has been more than I expected," the father finally said quietly. "I thought I was just asking for help. I didn't know it would change everything." The woman looked at him, her eyes reflecting the same mix of joy and sadness he felt. "I know," she said softly. "I didn't think it would change me either. I thought I was just doing a kind act for a little girl, but I feel like I've been given something too. Something I've been missing for a long time." He nodded slowly, understanding her without needing words. They had both found something in this week that neither expected: comfort, connection, and a sense of family. When the little girl woke, she ran to them, tugging at their hands. "Can we go outside, Mommy, please? Just one last adventure today?" They smiled and followed her to the small park nearby. The sunlight was gentle, the air filled with the scent of blooming flowers. The little girl ran ahead, laughing, her energy boundless. The father and the woman walked behind, quietly enjoying the moment, neither wanting to speak because words felt inadequate. At the park, they played together, simple games like tag and catch, but the joy in her laughter made it feel extraordinary. The father caught himself smiling freely, without the heaviness he had carried for so long. The woman laughed with him, a sound so genuine it made him realize how much she had become part of their lives. As the afternoon sun began to dip, the little girl sat between them on a bench, exhausted but happy. She looked up at the woman. "Mommy, can we be a family forever?" she asked, her voice small and hopeful. The woman felt her chest tighten. She looked at the father, whose eyes mirrored her own emotions. "Sweetheart," she said gently, "families come in many forms, and love can last forever, even if people aren't always together." The little girl nodded slowly, accepting the answer. She leaned back against the woman, resting her head, her tiny hand in hers. The father placed his hand over theirs, and for a moment, it felt like the three of them had always been a family. When it was time to go home, the little girl ran ahead, talking excitedly about dinner and the little crafts they would finish. The father walked behind, holding the woman's hand lightly, unsure if he wanted to let go yet. Back at the apartment, they spent the evening tidying up. The little girl helped pack away balloons, laughing at the confetti that stuck to her hands. She hugged them both repeatedly, whispering, "I love you," in between giggles. Each hug felt heavier than the last, knowing the week was ending. But the warmth in those moments lingered, creating memories that would last a lifetime. Finally, after the little girl went to bed, the father and the woman sat together in the living room. The air was quiet, and the apartment felt emptier than it had all week. "I don't want her to wake up tomorrow and find things different," the father said softly. "I don't know how to explain to her that you're leaving." She reached out and took his hand. "It's not about leaving," she said gently. "It's about giving her something she needed. And you gave her so much love already. She knows she's safe. That won't change." He nodded, though he still felt a knot in his chest. I've grown used to you being here, more than I expected." "Me too," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I never thought a week could feel like a lifetime of love." They sat quietly for a long time, simply holding hands, sharing a connection that words could not describe. It had started as an act of kindness, a small request from a desperate father, but it had turned into something far greater, in a bond, fragile yet strong, built on care, trust, and shared humanity. The next morning, when the little girl woke, she ran to the living room as usual. The woman was there, smiling softly, though a hint of sadness lingered. "Good morning, sweetheart," she said. "Are you ready for one more day of fun?" The little girl hugged her tightly. "Yes, Mommy. But don't go." The woman held her a little longer. "I won't go right now," she said gently. "But we'll make today special, just like all the days this week." They spent the morning together, baking, playing, and reading stories. The little girl laughed and sang, filling the apartment with warmth. The father watched, feeling a strange mixture of happiness and dread. He knew the end of the week was near, and saying goodbye would be hard. As the afternoon approached, the little girl asked to go to the park one last time. They walked together, holding her hands, savoring each step. At the park, the little girl ran ahead, shouting and laughing, while the father and the woman followed at a slower pace, their eyes meeting in silent understanding. When the little girl finally tired and sat on the bench, she looked up at both of them. "Thank you for everything," she said softly. I'll never forget this week. The father knelt beside her, hugging her tightly. We'll never forget it either, he said, his voice thick with emotion. The woman smiled, brushing a strand of hair from the little girl's face. You've made this week the happiest I've ever had, she whispered. I'm so proud of you. As the sun began to set, they walked home together. The apartment felt warm and full, though the knowledge of goodbye hung over them like a shadow. After dinner, the little girl went to bed, hugging her stuffed bear and smiling in her sleep. The father and the woman sat in the living room one last time, holding hands. I don't want this to end, he said quietly. She shook her head softly. Nothing truly ends. What we've shared will stay with us. We just have to let life continue. He nodded, though his chest ached. I never expected this week to change me. To change us, she squeezed his hand. Sometimes the smallest acts of love leave the biggest marks, she said. You've reminded me what family feels like. And I hope we can find a way to continue it, even in our own ways. The next morning, she left. The little girl awoke to find her mommy gone and cried, but the father held her, comforting her as best he could. Later that day, the father found a small note left by the woman. Thank you for letting me be part of your lives. I'll never forget this week. Love can grow in the smallest moments, and you've both shown me that. Always he read it silently, tears streaming down his face. He knew that this week had been more than an act. It had been the beginning of something real, a bond that could not be broken by time or distance. Days later, he returned to the cafe where it had all begun, hoping to see her again, and there she was, sitting quietly, a gentle smile on her face. He approached, feeling a mixture of hope and fear. Hi, he said softly. She looked up, surprised but happy. Hi, she replied. He swallowed hard. I was wondering, maybe we don't have to pretend anymore? She smiled, a warmth in her eyes. Maybe we don't, she said. And in that moment, the week that began as a desperate plea had turned into something far greater. A new family, built not by blood but by love, trust, and the courage to open hearts when they had been broken. For the little girl, it was the happiest birthday she could remember. For the father and the woman, it was the start of a life that promised healing, connection, and love, a life none of them had dared to imagine before that one extraordinary week. The week ended, but their story was just beginning.